Okay, go ahead. We can use the raise a hand function and we can get started. Christina, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, good morning. I guess since pitchers and catchers are the ones in camp so far, the rotation has, a lot of different candidates, a lot of young candidates. How, I guess, are you guys going to go about deciding who rounds out, the five?
I think we just let them pitch. I think Derek's talked about it. Competition is healthy. There's a number of guys for those last couple of spots, and we let guys pitch and compete and see where it goes.
Following up, is it based on spring performance? Because I know, there's a couple guys that debuted last year, but maybe were expedited with their call-ups because of, the COVID outbreak. Is that something that would be taken into consideration, maybe more grooming for them, or no, it's just based solely on?
Yeah, I think the things you talk about is fair, because things that we talk about in the winter, some guys that were here probably before they should have been, but which is okay. They got some experience, and then that's where your decision-making process you're putting everything kind of in that decision. Part of it is, their experience. Part of it is what do you still feel like they need, or you feel like they're ready. You see guys come up at 20 years old that are ready. So you see a Juan Soto come into a camp, and you could wait for him and let him get more experience, but he's ready at 20, so you let him roll, right? So I think that's the same thing with us. Is let's see who's ready. And if everybody agrees that, that this is the right thing, then that's what we do.
Okay, let's go to Jordan.
Yeah, hey, Donnie. Close to 24 new faces, at least for you to get your eyes on for the first time, just through pitchers and catchers. With the fact that they're smaller groups right now because of COVID, does that kind of help you in terms of getting closer eyes on guys, doing the meet and greet, and really trying to get to know a lot of these guys who you haven't met yet?
Well, it's definitely these first few days when you get your group together, pitchers and catchers, there's always a few new faces. So it is a time to be able to do that. It's tougher probably this year from the standpoint, like our early meetings have been virtual. You're limiting contact and limiting guys, and you're spreading guys out and staggering times. But it has given me a chance yesterday to be able to at least say hello to guys that I know their numbers and know, we've discussed them in the meetings, but haven't been able to really actually talk to them. So just to basically be able to introduce myself, start to get your eyes on them, see how they're reacting and how they're moving around. I think it's for me, it's really probably one of the most important things at camp is starting to build that relationship with guys and just kind of get your eyes on them.
Jess Blaylock.
Hi, good morning, Donnie. Hey, over the last year and a half, we've really seen Sandy kind of go from hoping his stuff is good enough to knowing his stuff is good enough, and also really embracing being a leader on a young staff. What's the next step that you see for him as far as his development?
Yeah, I mean, Sandy's growing. And I think, the one thing I would disagree a little bit, I don't think he ever hoped his stuff was good enough. I think he always knew his stuff was good enough. But I don't think when he first came up, he actually knew what it took to become that next level guy that he wanted to be. And he's showing that he wants to be. So for Sandy, it's just now build consistency. He's came from a guy that came up with good stuff to all of a sudden now his bullpens are different. His prep before a game is different. Everything that he's doing in between training wise is different, right? He knows that it takes all of those processes to build him to be one of the best guys in the game. And that's what he talks about being. And so his example is all he needs. And I know he's willing to talk to guys and help guys, but when you get a guy that's a good example, it's probably, he doesn't really need his words. He does it with his actions. And I think that's where Sandy's getting to, right? He's showing everybody this is the way you go about your business. He didn't have to really talk about it. So that's been the growth for me with him. And then the confidence has come, right, with success. He's attacked the strike zone more. See his velo go up last year. It tells you he's willing to let the ball go a little bit more strikes. Strikeout rate goes up. All the things that you know that was there, it's like the confidence shows that he's starting to relax and to use his stuff.
Kelly?
Hey, Donnie, to kind of build on what Jessica was saying, but this time with Pablo Lopez, he's shown he can, showed last year he could be more aggressive and more confident. But where does he go from there? What do you need to see from him to elevate his game?
I think you're right on with a lot like Sandy, which is a guy that's, he understands the processes, right? He's always been a hard worker. Sometimes we had to get him out of his own way a little bit. He's a smart kid. He studied early on. He took notes. Want him to be a little more reactionary out there and just be aggressive. And so I think just the confidence in his stuff, right? His routine is better. He's made some little small changes in his routine as far as his bullpens and what day he throws them on. He's gotten in the strike zone more. We think he can even improve. So he's on the same path as a guy that's got the stuff. His routines have gotten better. His confidence has rose. So he's on the right path. He's in good shape.
Barry Jackson.
Hi, Don. How much of a letdown was it? Was it at all a letdown when you heard the news about Cabrera? Just because he's a guy who obviously has great stuff, we hear, and would have been a candidate for the fifth spot. So was it a letdown at all? And is there still hope that he could be able to do something at some point this spring?
Well, obviously, this is something that we follow just so we find out about it late in the winter. And then with the issues of trying to get a guy from one country to another now is a little different. So that caused a little bit of a delay. So obviously you're always disappointed when anything sets a guy back a little bit. But I think from there, we just basically take our time and let this thing take care of itself, or us take care of it. We've got him here to the States. He's been evaluated. We know what we're doing. Already showing improvement. Still able to do a lot of things. We will see him, we feel like, at some point this year, but we're not going to put a timetable on him. He's young. We know he's going to be good. It's just a matter of letting this thing get him right, get his throwing program going, and then move forward, and we'll see where it goes.
Great. And one last quick thing, just on the fifth starting job, who would you put in that mix as guys you want to look at beyond Rogers, Garrett, Neidert? Is there anyone else? And of course, as you've said previously, you're looking at three guys projected, and you didn't say Sixto was assured, so I didn't name him. But as far as the fifth spot, if Sixto should win the fourth spot.
Well, I think you mentioned the guys. You got to throw Castano in that. So, and quite honestly, we're going to need all those guys through the course of the season. You do every year. We're going to have things that we'll be watching with all our guys all year long. So we're going to need all these guys. But I think all those guys are fair to be candidates. Obviously, Sixto, we know how good he is. And it's just a matter of him getting, I think he got in last night. So get him through the intake and get his process started. So yeah, I think you're right on with the candidates.
Thanks, Don.
Steve Wine.
Don, you mentioned Sandy potentially as one of the best in the game. What do you see as the one or two things that give him that potential? I know he's got a lot of attributes. What's at the very top of the list for you?
I think you see the one, like the wannabe, which is huge. I mean, it's a guy with the stuff that if you really just going to go match it up with anybody in the game, you're going to say his stuff can be as good as anybody's. And then he has that want to be good and be great, right? In his words, great. I want to be great, right? So now we're seeing him take the steps as far as the processes go that you have to take to be one of those guys. Those guys, they've all got good stuff that are, been the guys over the years, but there's probably probably all of them do all the other stuff. And that's where Sandy's heading. He's got pitches for everybody, the righty, the lefty. It's a mix of enough stuff to keep everybody off balance, to get good hitters out. So it's a matter of him becoming consistent and just keep continuing to improve.
Some of these young guys have pitched very little since 2019, and they're still in an age where the body changes. I'm wondering who has changed the most physically just looking at them for you?
You can see it coming with your younger guys. The bodies just fill out. I don't know, obviously it's been a quick sea of everyone.
Yeah.
And a couple of guys aren't here at this point. But we're seeing Trevor Rogers when we do our Zoom calls. I'm like seeing this neck. I'm like, what happened to this guy, right? This skinny 6'6" kid that all of a sudden you see this body coming. And that's really what you see with younger guys. You see them as minor leaguers. You're like seeing this almost skinny kid, right? And I always go back to Jeet. I remember seeing Jeet like in his first camp, and it was like this scrawny little 17-year-old. And then a few years later, it's like, oh, it's a man, right? And the same with these guys. It just keeps changing.
Back to Christina.
Yeah, Paul Campbell and Zach Pop, the two Rule 5 guys, where do they sort of fit into the equation?
We see, right? They have to make our club, or they have an opportunity to go back. Both guys are impressive. We're going to be able to see them in camp, and we'll see where that goes. They're in a competition, basically. And when you say competition, I hope it's not to a point of like every spot is a competition. I think that competition is just to continue to show what you can do, and give us some credit that it's not always the bottom line number that we see. It's like how the guy handles stuff. What's his pitch mix? Can he locate? Maybe had a little bit of a rough outing here or there, but give us credit to see what they can be. And so we'll let them pitch. Both guys have been impressive to this point of how they've gotten themselves ready. They're ready to go. So we'll see how it plays out.
With Paul Campbell, I think it might have been you a couple months ago mentioned he's one of those like in-betweeners, almost like Castano. Do you see him as maybe serving a similar role? Could those guys kind of maybe go to the bullpen, let's say, if they don't make the rotation?
Yeah, I think Paul is that guy. He's been a starter for the most part, but we think he could be really good out of the pen. And usually Rule 5 guys are a lot easier to be able to maneuver, through the pen. It's hard if they're a starter, unless they just come and taking over a job, right? But usually those guys are young, haven't got past a certain point in their career at this point. So it's usually easier to break that guy in through the bullpen. But we see him as a guy that started. He's got a pitch mix that can do it. But we'll be looking at him, kind of both ways, like you said. He's a little bit like a Castano who's pitched out of the pen and he's started. And we think both of those guys could do both.
Jordan.
Yeah, hey Donnie, I was just curious what your thoughts on Sandy Leon. He's in camp as a non-roster invite. He's a veteran catcher. Just how much do you think he can help the club, especially as you continue to work with Alfaro and Wallach and having that extra veteran presence back there?
No, Sandy looks good. He's in great shape. Watched him hitting the cage a little bit this morning. He's swinging the bat good. As far as that goes, it looks good. I had some history with Ron Renicky, who managed him last year, and seen him in Boston the year before, or not last year, but seen him in Boston. As soon as we signed him, he sent me a text right away that, how this guy is with the pitchers and how he handles the staff and, great teammate and things like that. So Sandy looks good, and it's good to have him in camp with us. You think he's a guy that's a little older, but bilingual. He understands the pitching. He can help all our other guys too. He can help Georgie. He can help Chad. He can help all the catchers.
Greg Mish.
Hey Donnie, good morning. Question about Alfaro. He did an interview the other day that I went back and listened to. He mentioned that he was in South Florida the entire offseason, sort of working hard and dedicating himself. I don't think that from our perspective, the hitting tells the story on the back of the baseball card, but what is it specifically defensively? What are those things, Donnie, that he's been working with Eddie and that you want to see? What are those tangible things? Thanks.
Well, obviously with Eddie's side of it, it's all about the mechanics of the catching, and we know the game today is about, how many strikes can you get, and how you're receiving, affects the game. So that's part of it. The other part of it that he's worked hard on is with Eddie and Mel, is about having a good understanding of our pitchers and how we game plan, and just kind of continuing to grow in that area. Been really happy with Georgie this winter, the work that he's put in. Like you said, he stayed in South Florida. And I don't mind saying Georgie's our guy. I mean, he's our frontline guy. He'll be the guy getting the bulk of the catching. But we want him to obviously continue to improve like anybody else. And so been happy with Georgie. I do think the swing is good. We're worried more about, shouldn't say worried, but we're working more about controlling the strike zone, swinging at strikes. I've said it many times, you are what you eat, right? You are what you swing at. You swing at balls and you chase, you're not going to hit. So we gotta get the ball in the strike zone, have better game plans, things like that. But been really happy with the work George has put in. He's been dedicated all winter to being in great shape, and not only physically, but then working on all the mental stuff with the catching and the game planning and all that.
Okay, a couple more. Kelly, and then we'll wrap up with Christina.
Hey, Donnie, I know you spoke about a couple days ago the changes to the baseball on the offensive side, but pitching wise, does the ball being 2.8 grams lighter affect them at all? And will you guys be using those baseballs during spring training, whether it's at practice and or the games?
Those are great questions, and I wish I had answers to them, but I don't know much about the science of how it's going to affect. I've read just a little bit about, they don't feel like it's going to be any different, but we'll see. And I don't know, if I'm assuming that we would have the balls to, this year's balls to be working with. I'm sure there's some practice balls or whatever that you use that aren't quite the same that you hit with, but I'm sure the pitchers are throwing, I would think they'd be throwing the ball they're going to be throwing all year.
Okay, and then Christina.
Yeah, I guess to close it out, the season priority was the bullpen, so a lot of veteran arms were brought in. I'm just curious, the younger guys that maybe debuted last year or that are prospects in the system, which ones are you, I guess, looking to see progress or development from? Because it's kind of tricky, because assuming the guys that you guys acquired stay healthy and whatnot, they'll make the roster and the others will go in the minors. But what do you want to see from those guys, like a Holloway or a Guzman?
Well, those guys were, you've seen it with a lot of teams, were kind of put into bullpens because, there was no minor league season, and they are part of your 40 man and guys that you like. But you're still trying to develop starters, and so you're going to do what's best for them to develop. So I don't see really Jordan trying to make him a reliever this year. We're trying to get him to be where he's a starter, give him the option to continue to grow. Sorry. Continue to grow and develop. Before last year, I don't think he had pitched past high A. So, this is a guy, we love his stuff. We love his, his makeup. We got to continue to help him grow. And Jorge's the same way. The more they pitch, the more they develop. And if they end up in the pen maybe later, who knows? But you still want to develop the pitch package. When they're starting, they're throwing pins in between starts, so they're continuing to work on everything. And so as a starter, they get to use all their pitches and develop. So we'll keep developing guys best we can until we think it's best to go into the pen.
Okay. Thank you, Skipper.
All right. Guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Donnie.